Genoese sponge is one of the oldest and most traditional way to do a sponge cake. The only leavening agent that we have on it is the eggs that we're going to be whisking. So there's no chemical leavening agents, it's only done by physical, which means we'll be whisking. So there's a couple of processes and special techniques I need to explain. Firstly, for this we need to have clarified butter. Clarified butter is also known in India as ghee. So basically all I've done is melted the butter, and I'm going to let that stand for approximately 15-20 minutes. When we look at it in about 20 minutes, we'll see it separate. We'll have all the solids at the bottom and all the pure fat at the top, and we actually just want the pure fat at the top. Again, for a Genoese sponge, if your eggs are at not room temperature, your sub-ion is just not going to work properly, and it's one of the most important things. Other things we need to know. If I start putting my sugar into this bowl and then start slowly cracking my eggs one by one, the thing that's going to happen is the sugar is going to cook my eggs. So we never do that. What we would do, just in case there's any off eggs as well, start cracking them into a bowl, placing them in there. Then once all my eggs are cracked into the bowl, I'll add my sugar and start whisking immediately. You cannot let your sugar sit on your egg for even a second. Otherwise you'll have bits of cooked egg yolk or eggs throughout your mix, and you'll have to chuck it out and start again. There's nothing we can do to rectify the problem. Another really important technique that we've got is that we're going to be cooking something on a double boiler. So when we represent or discuss double boiler, it's basically a pot of water with a small amount of water. So approximately an inch worth of water, which is about 2.5 centimeters. Most important thing we need to think about when we're doing a double boiler. So what we're going to be doing is cooking our egg and sugar over this. One thing we can't have is that bottom of that bowl touching the water. If that happens, you cook your egg yolk. And if that happens, you have to chuck it out and start again. So there's a few real critical control points when we're doing our Genoese sponge. So whenever we make sponge cakes, we need to triple sieve our flour. The reason why, we don't only get rid of the lumps, but by sieving it, we actually get air inside of it. So by this simple process, we're putting a whole heap of extra air. Quite simply, pour it. Again, sieve again, and then one more time. I always tend to add maybe an extra 5 grams just to compensate for any losses, as we see here. Now, clarified butter, as we can see at the bottom, that's clarified. At the top we have got pure fat. And at the bottom we have got all the water, salts and solids. So we want to eradicate that bottom layer. We don't want only that top layer. I reckon these are all good. Add our sugar, 250 grams. Mix straight away. Bring your water to the boil. Turn it down to a slow heat. And make sure you have towels next to you. If there's anything dirty on the side, I tend to clean it straight away, because sometimes it can get stuck or start cooking, which is something that we don't want. Alright, quite simply, bowl on top, and as you can see the volume in there that we have at the moment, we need to triple the volume. We know our sub-ion is ready, and what will happen now, it's quite dark colour. As we start mixing it, it's going to incorporate air, it's going to get lighter in colour and whiter. So at the end, what we're going to be able to do is draw a number 8 on top. It will stay on the top, and it's the best trick to know whether or not our sub-ion is ready. Now, if your water is not boiling or simmering enough, turn it up a little bit. But bear in mind, you might have to turn it down. At this point, you are whisking this for approximately 10 to 15 minutes. I can't give you an exact time. If you're doing it like this, it will take you half an hour to an hour. If you're doing it like this, it will take you 10 minutes. So again, it will depend on how fast you're doing it, how high your pot is, and how hot the water is. So there's a lot of factors that will speed it up or slow it down. So this traditionally is known as a sabayon. The Italians would call it very similar to zablione, but a sabayon is a base for many different desserts, ice creams, desserts, cakes. So as you can see, we're getting bubbles in there now. And we're working the eggs as they are our leavening agent. The leavening agent is something that creates carbon dioxide. You can't stop whisking, otherwise your egg will cook and you'll have sweet scrambled eggs. If this occurs, you must put it in the bin and start again. Lots of things can go wrong around about now, so you need to bear in mind and take care. So we've almost 1.5. We've halved it already. We can see there's air getting in there. It's getting lighter in colour, however the viscosity has not changed yet. So the eggs are not thickening as of yet. But the air is getting in there. If you have big spillages down the side, I tend to clean it. What will happen, that will cook. I can see my water's getting rather warm underneath, so I'm going to turn the temperature down. Make sure you don't stop whisking. At this point, if I do, I'm going to cook my eggs straight away because my water, I can tell, is quite warm. As you can see, it's getting slightly thicker. Now, if I draw a number 8 on top, I can just see it. So what's eventually going to happen, I'm going to draw that number 8 on top and it's going to sit on top. By the time I finish the number 8, it will still be standing there. If your sabayon's getting too hot, take it off the heat. You can control your heat at all times by just taking it on or off. As you can see, it's getting thicker. But if I cook it too quickly, I'll have scrambled eggs, which I don't want. So I'm cooling it down a bit. Back on. Kind of white. When I draw a number 8 on top, you can just barely see it by the time I finish it. So I'm approximately maybe 4 minutes away from finishing. Alright, so now when I do my number 8, I still can see the top of it by the time I finish it. We know at this point our sabayon is almost ready. I mean, it could be a touch thicker, which I'm going to take it just a little bit more. So now for the last 30 seconds I'll put the heat up. You've got to be careful with putting the heat up, otherwise you will make scrambled eggs. So just be a little bit cautious of this critical control point. Alright, so we take it off and now we mix it until it's cold. Now if we don't cool this Genoese sponge down before adding the flour and the butter, what's going to happen? It's going to collapse on us. So this is really another CCP with regards to making the sabayon of utmost importance. So now this sabayon is nice and cool, about 20 degrees give or take. We're going to add our sifted flour. Now you could use a sieve and directly sieve it in, up to you. However, don't plonk it all in one spot. If you do so, you're going to put a whole heap of weight on top of it, which is not what you want to do. Now we're going to incorporate a small amount at a time, so approximately 1/3 at the beginning, and the process of folding. still got 2/3 of my flour. One more third of flour on top, give or take. Mix only 3/4. Okay, my last third. Now obviously I need to mix properly. Okay, now we still do have flour in there, but I still also need to mix my butter through. So what I'm going to do to pour that ghee, I'm going to pour it not directly on top but on the side of my bowl and move the bowl as I go along. Like I said, we don't want any of the whites down below, that's why we clarified it in the first place. So we need to take some care to make sure we don't get any of that in and we only get that top part. Like so. Now we need to mix 100%. Make sure all flour and butter is incorporated, and then we'll just divide it into our 2 tins. Beautiful, rich, creamy, light as a feather. Beautiful. Now I'm going to put it into 2 tins. If I put it all in 1 tin, it's going to be way too much. So we'll separate it to 2 tins. Then we bake it for approximately 15-20 minutes at 180 degrees. Turn, don't knock your cake like that. We don't want to get rid of the air, so I spin it around instead. That will even it up. Straight into the oven, 180. So, cake's center, be careful not to knock your air out. Approximately 20 to 25 minutes. In about 15 minutes, I will rotate it 180 degrees. Sponge is now ready, so I'm going to be unmolding it exactly the same as we did with our other cakes. What we can do though is already remove that. If we had cooked it all in one, obviously it would have been way too much because they've turned out beautifully. Perfect. I'll try this again. So whenever we present our cakes, that bottom is much flatter, so that becomes the top of our cake. Obviously sometimes it's a bit uneven, but we can cut that before we layer it. Now we just have to cool it 100% before doing anything else. So Genoese sponges is something really good to pre-make and to freeze. It actually freezes down really, really well. So I just want to run you through how we would wrap our cakes and label them adequately and ready for the freezer or just for storage. Make sure your cake is 100% cold before you wrap it. Right, simply. If I'm freezing it, I will always double wrap to try to prevent any kind of freezer burn from occurring. One more. Genoese and 7/1, today's date, 7/1, VW made. So who made it? VW made. And you could even put a use by if you want. Use by, because we know cakes will last approximately 3 months, so we need to use it by what's that? January, February, March, April. Use by mid-April. April 19. And that's all. So then we can place in the freezer, know that we know what the product is, who made it, when to use it, and when to use it by.